and met this gentleman, a professor. This gentleman told him that he knew why we were out. We wanted to get support and sympathy for Nigeria and to explain the federal course to the international community. And he explained that the international community was not particularly interested in Nigeria as such. All that people were interested in were our resources. And he even went further to say, if we could get robots to exploit your resources for us to develop our economies, we wouldn't mind the whole lot of you being eliminated. But, he said, in the case of Nigeria, there is a difference. And the difference is that Nigerians are very hard-working and very intelligent. And they have got resources, most of which they know next to nothing about. If this country, Nigeria, with all these resources, both human and material, was to have an uninterrupted period of 20 years of peace and stability, it would be another Japan. Because these intelligent, hard-working Nigerians would come to know about their resources, they would use their intelligence and work hard and exploit those resources and develop their economy. A developing economy needs a market, he said. In our own case, you have no problem with the market. Your population is large enough to provide the market that you need. And even without that, the Nigerian market is the entire West African region and beyond. So you will have no problem with the market. Therefore, if you are given an uninterrupted period of 20 years of peace and stability, you would become another Japan, you would threaten our economy, you would be a thorn in our flesh. That was the view of this professor in 1967. And he therefore ended by saying that even after the Civil War, we will not allow you to rest. We will create one problem after another for you. Knowing this, therefore, I feel that in spite of our shortcomings, which I must admit we have, there is a kind of orchestrated campaign against Nigeria so that it may not emerge the economic giant that it is destined to be.
To better understand what I'm saying, it's simple. To better understand what I will say, we need to go back a little in time. You need to go back in time and read about the Tsars, Mongol conquests, Persian, Turkish and Ottoman empires. Read their history and you will understand why the world is the way it is. At the base of the triangle, there are two empires. On one side, the empire of evil, and on the other, the empire of slaves. This is how they see the world. Who do they call the empire of evil? Those I just mentioned. Go back in time, read, and you will understand why they see them as the empire of evil. They believe they must fight and eradicate the empire of evil because it embodies the devil. They communicate this and make their people understand it that way. This is why after World War II, in the 1980s, I will take the case of Russia. All schemes were implemented to collapse it under President Gorbachev, orchestrated by President Ronald Reagan. Three main strategies caught our attention. First, they went to Saudi Arabia and asked them to lower the oil price from $35 to $7 to collapse the Russian economy. Alongside that, remember something. The second strategy, they armed the Taliban, who were received by President Ronald Reagan at the White House with CIA-supplied Stinger surface-to-air missiles to fight the Russians. Later, they pretended to fight the Taliban themselves. Go figure. The third strategy was a bluff, the Star Wars project, which led Gorbachev to create the Paulus project, sinking Russia further. Once Russia collapsed, those who claimed to be the empire of good began to gloat until Vladimir Putin's team came to revive Russia.
You can't reconcile the fact that our soldiers are being chased around by bandits. Here is the same Nigerian army restored peace in Sierra Leone. Disbanded a rebel group and arrested their leader, Ode Sanko, and imprisoned him in Nigerian police station. You will say
the same.
or this army went to Liberia under a command and brought peace and democracy and disbanded all the rebel. How do you reconcile that? How do you reconcile the fact that this country gave financial aid to Dubai in 1973? How do you reconcile that? Now, but I'm telling you practical things that this country has done. In 1985, when there was a Chinuba leak, Babangida gave $100 million donation to Russia as solidarity. So this country is not a country. Nigeria is a serious country. But we have a generation of political leaders who have made us a laughing stock. But we can fix it.
Alright guys, Sahel coming to you with another video. I know it's been a couple of days since I've done a video, but let me finish up the Slavopobia, Russophobia video. Now, in part 2, you saw the videos I put at the beginning of the of this one. And the thing is destabilization. That's one of the key things that they like to do when they feel threatened by something that perhaps will take them away from what they're used to, how should I put it, doing. And you know, the thing is, and I'm just going to say this. I'm just going to say this. That the racism that the Anglo-American has, the racism that the Brit has, the racism that the Italian has, the racism that the French have, the racism that the Portuguese have, the racism that the Spaniard has, is mostly rooted in insecurity, mostly rooted in a fear that they will, you know, the person will recognize their greatness. You know, tomorrow here in Russia, we're having Victory Day. They're doing Victory Day parade. You know, this is going on tomorrow. They're having Victory Day. So the thing is that they're doing Victory Day, and you know, Donald Trump, because he's so insecure, he decided that, okay, let me add 2 more days to make this like make my own quote unquote like type of Victory Day celebration. The thing is that as I said before, America was going to be on the side of the Nazis if it wasn't for Pearl Harbor. Also, America pretty much came at the tail end of the war. It was mostly the Red Army that was doing the heavy lifting in this war. America came at the tail end. They really didn't do much of the heavy lifting, as they would lead you out to believe, you know. So, with that being said, yes, the thing is that, in my opinion, this is just my humble opinion, the racism and their, like, for example, their Russophobia, it's not rooted in a sense of superiority. You know, it's not rooted in that. Because, in my opinion, if you were a superior person, you wouldn't stick your nose up at anybody. Your superiority would just be like apparent. in the way you carry yourself. For example, we have the best example of the Prophet Muhammad alayhi salatu salam, where we know he was superior to everybody, yet he carried himself in a way that was, how should I put it, was one with humility, because he knew he was superior. You know, that's the thing. He knew he was above rank in rank. His rank was above everybody else. So that's why he carried himself in such a way, because he knew. Whereas, whereas these people, be it the British, the Americans, the French, the Canadians, and those Western Anglo group of people, they carry themselves in a way that, you know, is not superior. Although they want to do these race theories and things like that, it doesn't really hold any weight, though, when it comes to achievements. You know, when it comes to the fact that, for example, in Timbuktu, we knew, like, we were doing advanced mathematics in Timbuktu, you know what I mean? So with that being said, it's like, you know, there's nothing you can really tell us. For example, you know, in Timbuktu, we were doing cataract eye surgeries in the middle of the desert. You know what I mean? And I'll add one more thing. In 1235, in the Mali Empire, Sundiata Keita, he had a constitution, you know, that it ensured the life, liberty, freedom, and safety and security of everybody and everybody's personal property. So, like, their Russophobia, right, and their anti-African sentiment is rooted in not a sense that they really think they're better, but in a sense that they think that they don't want anybody to, how should I put it? They don't want anybody to excel them. Okay, they don't want anybody to be ahead of them. Hence why, you know, and I don't agree with the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan, but it just goes to show you that, you know, for example, they kind of gaslit the Soviets into invading Afghanistan to weaken the Soviet Union, and that's what ended up happening. That's what happened, is that the Soviet Union dissolved. You know, and as His Excellency Ibrahim Traoré said, a lot of that, the fact that it dissolved had a lot to do with the Afghan war, as you see. So, and it's the same thing in Africa. For example, I mean, I've said it before, but you heard the Nigerian brother at the beginning, that, you know, and that they just want to make problems with us. They just want to keep on making problems. They just want to keep making the world, you know, they make the world think that we are lesser than, because, for example, you know, you see Africans doing, you know, unfortunately, like grievous things to cross the straits to get to Europe for a better life, but, you know, they're not telling you that companies like Shell and these companies are there putting their hands up and saying, you know, it's not my problem. They're not telling you that these Western-backed insurgencies, be it Boko Haram, be it Al Qaeda Maghreb, being who else? I think they call it ISWAP or something like that. And even new groups are coming up. Even new groups are coming out of nowhere, coming out the woodworks. So they're not telling you these things, right? That they're not telling you that they're largely responsible for the reason that these, Africans are going to Europe, They always tell you, go back to Africa, this, that, and the other, but they're not telling you that they'll tell you to go back to Africa, but they don't tell you that there's unwanted guests in Africa, and they're the unwanted guests. You understand? Because if, for example, let's just say a house was in order, and meaning the house of it was in order, meaning that the head of the household was strict, just, and dealt with everybody in the best way possible, and made people content, then they wouldn't like that house. They wouldn't like that. So when we go back to the Russophobia, they've done similar things, meaning the NATO expansion. You know what I mean? The NATO expansion, the war in Georgia with the war in Georgia with I want to say between Russia and Georgia, was because of them gaslighting, because of them putting weapons in Georgia. Okay. Let's just say, for example, the Abkhazia situation. The reason why Abkhazia had to break away is because if Abkhazia didn't break away from Georgia, if Ossetia didn't break away from Georgia, then Georgia would have became a NATO state. Now, granted, these people wanted to break away. That's the thing. They were like, hey, we might as well break away anyway. So they wanted to break away, and so this is what happened. And again, America and the collective West will use states like Ukraine, will use states like Georgia and what have you, to incite this, the big bad boogeyman, the big bully, Russia. Where on the flip side, the West, the collective West will use, our region, the Sahel, as, dictatorship. Lack of democracy. Things like that. Okay? So it's part of the destabilization process, because some Africans, want to regain what's theirs, like we do in the Sahel. Some recognize their greatness, And in terms of the Russia and the Slavopobia, this was furthermore multiplied with the Chechen wars. And I'm not saying, they should have never went to war with Chechnya, and the Russians should have never, ever fought, in my opinion. The first war, when Russia decided that, oh, we need to go into Chechnya, that was a big mistake, okay? The second war as well. Now, in terms of assistance, however, though, let's just say that the CIA was all up in Chechnya's grill, giving it assistance, giving it all kinds of things, probably even financial support. Okay. All because they wanted to, again, harbor this Russophobia, this Slavopobia. So I say this to say, okay, I'm bringing this point home. I'm bringing this point home, okay? And I might as well just end the video here. I don't have to like talk over and over about this subject. Hopefully my point, hopefully the point I made is very clear. But I say this to say that that the West, the collective West, and especially the Anglo collective West does this fear harboring, this Russo-Slavophobia, and this anti-African sentiment because they just don't want us to rise. They just don't want another superpower. They just, that's why you have to ask yourself this question. The United States has never really been a friend with another superpower. It always tried to put it down, okay? Always. So when you see, for example, the Sahel trying to basically take back its stolen greatness, when you see Russia, that largely, when it was in a liberal economy, was in a very bad situation. They don't want us to realize our greatness. Therefore, they do fear-mongering. Therefore, they do destabilization. Okay? The racism is not rooted in a sense of superiority. The racism is rooted in basically insecurities. We can see that in Haiti when the America occupied the island. Nothing improved in Haiti, okay? It was very, very tough there with their occupation, basically. So that's why, for me, to be honest, these people have no redeeming factors. The collective West really doesn't have any redeeming factors at all. And I'm going to say one more thing in this video. It's really only a minority who think different from the people I'm speaking about. The majority think the way I'm talking about right now. It's only a minority that think differently. But with this being said, inshallah, I'll have some coverage tomorrow, Victory Day. It should be good, my country's ambassador ain't showing up, but I know that His Excellency Ibrahim Traore will be in Moscow. I will not be in Moscow though, but I will cover what's going on in my locality, basically. Sahel signing out. Jarama, thank you for listening.